Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing good. Now, today I've got a very special guest. As you all know, Arsenal women do play Chelsea women this weekend, and I thought I'd bring on a Chelsea fan to chat a bit about their season, how they're feeling going to this game. But Rob, thank you so much for coming on my channel. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, and thank you very much for the invite. It's my pleasure to join you.
Oh, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, obviously for Arsenal women, we're not doing too great, and we'll come and speak about that at the end. And I wanted just to chat about Chelsea's season so far. Obviously, you've got a new manager, Emma Hayes has left, and obviously that's been a big blow for the team. But this new manager's come in, and honestly, I think you just look as strong as you did last season. And obviously, the WSL has only started. There's been a couple of games, but how are you feeling so far, like about your season?
Yeah, I think so far you have to be certainly from a WSL perspective satisfied. Obviously, Sonia Bonpastor coming in comes in with a glittering CV from her time at Olympique Lyonnais, both as a player and as a manager. But ultimately, she has got a very very tough act to follow. It's similar, I think, to when you had Alex Ferguson leaving on the
Yeah.
men's side for Manchester United when Arsene Wenger left Arsenal on the men's side. You've got such a tough act to follow. Even when Jose Mourinho left Chelsea the first time, I think it's such a tough act for the next manager to follow because you're not only having to deal with the legacy from a trophy point of view, you're just dealing with the legacy of the fact of who Emma Hayes was as a character and what she meant not only to Chelsea, but I think to English football. But I actually think Bonpastor's done a very good job so far. Admittedly, I think certainly one of the games has demonstrated that when Chelsea are not necessarily at their best, they can still win. And I think the other game has demonstrated that if Chelsea get into their rhythm, certainly for 45 minutes, they can be such a frightening prospect and really can rip teams apart. I think Chelsea will be a bit frustrated to not get the game against Manchester United on last week. Obviously, multiple reasons for that, and I don't think that's one to go into at this moment in time. But I think they'll be a little bit frustrated to have had that break in momentum because they looked in a good place. And okay, they beat Real Madrid in the Champions League the other day, but it was by no means a convincing victory. However, it was also you have to take into account there's been illness in the camp this week, and also the fact that there was a significant rainfall beforehand. The pitch was a very very heavy pitch. It wasn't easy conditions to sort of play attractive football in. But I do think generally people will be quite happy with how Bonpastor's done so far. I think ultimately 2 games played, 8 scored in the league, 0 conceded. It's hard not to be happy.
Yeah, I think, you've had a good start, like you said. I mean, I think with Madrid, I think obviously getting that win was the most important thing. But like you said, I think, it got quite close towards the end. You could really see it maybe them equalising. But I think with
Mm.
Chelsea, I think obviously it's quite early on at the moment to sort of, see who will win the league. I mean, Man City for me do seem better this season. Um, it's so tough because obviously with the game coming up, it could sort of, if Arsenal win that, then probably puts us in a good position. But I think if we do lose that, it's hard for me to sit here and say we're in the title race because,
Mm.
like with the WSL, you can't really lose many games if you want to win the league. So I think it's definitely going to be competitive this season, especially Man City because they have done very good. But I wanted to speak a bit about the Champions League because obviously the women's team have got so close to doing it.
Mhm.
Chelsea have, done really well. I know Barcelona is sort of that team that kind of always puts you out of the competition, but you
Mhm.
do seem really close to achieving that goal. Obviously, Lucy Bronze as well is a good player. She's come in and obviously she's got a lot of experience as well. She's won it a lot of times. Do you think having her as well will give you sort of the experience and it'll be your time this season to win the Champions League?
I think it certainly does help. I mean, I would also, point out that beforehand Chelsea also had Buchanan and Macari also come in recent years who've got the experience of, being there and having done that as per se. Baltimore herself as well has also got to a final, I believe, with Paris Saint-Germain. So it's not as if there aren't players there that now have that experience and that nous. I just think in Chelsea's case, certainly last year felt like a quite a watershed moment because they were able to go to Spain and win in Barcelona, win at Estadio Luis Company, which is something that no other team really has managed to do. And I think the second leg, refereeing decisions aside, Chelsea will be quite happy with the way they played in the fixture, if not with the result. I do think that they are one of the teams that will view the Champions League as winnable. That said, I think there's a lot of teams in the Champions League that will view it that way. And I don't necessarily think FC Barcelona are quite as all powerful as they were a few seasons ago. In all honesty, now at this moment in time, I think they could get there because they brought in Eva Payor, and once she really settles, you've got a striker who will score pretty much game for a game. I think Manchester City, you said, I think they will be dark horses for a lot of teams in the Champions League. I actually could see them doing very, very well out of the English clubs because of the fact they've
Yeah,
got players that can rise to the big occasion, and you've got people like, Bunny Shaw, Viviana Miedemeier, Lauren Hemp, Jill Roord, that are the sort of players that can decide matches, Chloe Kelly, that can decide matches on their own. I think Arsenal actually, despite the fact that, obviously opening loss to Bayern wasn't sort of a fantastic performance, but I still think that they will still get through in their group, in all honesty. I do think they will probably see it through. And I do think that the further they get into the competition, maybe that's where they'll sort of thrive a little bit more. Obviously,
yeah,
maybe, getting the Emirates sort of packed and roaring, that's always a big, thing for Arsenal. Leon and Leon, and ruling them out would be stupid. And I think Bayern, as you saw yesterday, FC Bayern have so much quality across the pitch, and I think they've also got that X factor this year, in that you've got people like, if they can keep Pernilla Harder fully fit. When I watched her at Chelsea for several years, she is one of the best footballers that I've ever seen on the planet, period. And if she is fully fit, as as Arsenal fans will now be well aware of, she can
yeah,
just have a 15-minute spell where it's bang and you're out the game. They've got people like Lea Schuler there, who's such a consistent goal scorer. Clara Bull, who is only getting better and better every single year. But I think they've also got the solidity in the midfield. People like Stanway, Lerman, Zadrazil, all in there that are so much quality. So I don't think it's a case, I think Chelsea will fancy themselves and will fancy themselves against anyone. Again, they will have the benefit of the fact of Sam Kerr back, later on in the season. Katerina Macario, if she's fully fit. I think Chelsea fans have really seen the best of her, but she is a phenomenal player. They've got Myra Ramirez, who, I stand by the fact, and I quite confidently say, if Chelsea had Myra Ramirez fit for the second leg last year, I think they would have made the final, because Barcelona really struggle against big physical centre forwards, as we saw yesterday. So I think, Chelsea will be quietly confident. And ultimately in the group stage, I think it is all about just getting out of the groups.
yeah,
The reason I think the Women's Champions League is harder than the Men's Champions League, in all honesty, is by the time you got to the women's one, because it's such a smaller band of teams in the
yeah,
tournament, every team is there on merit, and they've all, gone through, either domestically have won the league, either won the Champions League, or have gone through a pretty grueling qualification process where you will face at least one or two good teams. And you look at some of the names that have already been, knocked out, people like Paris Saint-Germain, Atletico Madrid.
mhm,
These are not these are not bad teams at all. It's
yeah.
Fiorentina. They're all good teams. So any team, I think, at this stage of it, you can't take lightly, and that's where I think the Champions League is a really special competition for me.
Yeah, I think it's so open like this year. Like you say, I think anyone could really do it. I mean, obviously Chelsea will really want to do it this season, but I think as well you mentioned that with Bayern, I think they seem so strong. Like when Arsenal last played Bayern, I don't think they had Harder, and she's obviously absolutely incredible, and that they've definitely got a lot more players, and I think it's so exciting to sort of see that competition. I do agree about Barcelona. Like Barcelona have still got some amazing players, but I could see Man City, the way Man City beat them yesterday. I mean, that's easily I understand that because Man City have improved so much, and I think it's just great for sort of women's the WSL as well to see sort of these sort of teams do really well. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. But I think with Arsenal, if we do kind of get out the group stages, like that's it's sort of like what we should be doing, but I just
Hmm.
don't think we're going to win. I don't really see us there yet. And I wanted to ask you a bit about Jonas and
Hmm.
Arsenal, I suppose. I mean, I do appreciate the season has just started. And I think for me, like at the moment, I do feel like he's out of his depth and I feel like I've just had enough really. Um,
Hmm.
but like I saw on the sort of like outside, I mean, we're playing you guys at the weekend. I mean,
Hmm.
how are you going to this game? Are you thinking easy win, or are you thinking like what are your thoughts? Because if I'm a Chelsea fan, I'm going to think Arsenal aren't doing too good at the moment.
Mm. I mean, firstly, whenever Chelsea play Arsenal, it's never an easy win due to the
Yeah,
nature of the two teams. Like, I think both teams would admit they have that little bit extra spice in this fixture. I think if you're looking at the WSL, certainly over the last decade, this has been, the equivalent of the Classico. The clash of styles. The fact you've had Chelsea sort of rising up through the ranks and Arsenal's historic sort of dominance in the women's game, perhaps slightly, being. I'm not going to say threatened, that's the wrong word from Chelsea, but Chelsea coming up and establish themselves as a powerhouse too. I do think that I actually wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal pull off a result on Saturday. That's because Chelsea have not a great record at the Emirates Stadium. I think the
yeah,
fans will be very, very up for it, and I also think the players will be determined to show a much better performance than they did midweek. In many ways, I'd have rather actually Chelsea got a decent result in Germany, because I think it would have allowed an element of sort of edge of complacency to maybe creep in a little bit. That said, I do think the first goal is going to be really important. If Arsenal can start well, a
Yeah.
bit like last year, and get that first goal, I think they're a very different proposition to if they concede first. And I do also think there will be an element of edge in the stadium in that Arsenal fans will know that they've struggled to score or even create really quality chances in at least two of their games. Obviously, against Manchester City, I think it was a more open fixture, but
Yeah.
certainly against Leicester, it was pretty turgid for a lot of it. Obviously, 1-0 win on one hand, keep the clean sheet. On the other hand, it wasn't as if it was a dominant 1-0 win. I thought Van Domselaar played very, very well in that game. And then against Everton, obviously, it was just a very, very strange fixture overall in that Arsenal never really looked like breaking them down. They had a couple of half chances. I think, obviously they hit the bar, but it was one of those games where you almost sort of felt Everton came off the pitch and felt they defended it quite comfortably. It wasn't as if
Yeah.
Courtney Brosnan had one of those games where she can have them, where she's just absolutely unbeatable, and you're just saying, well, fair play goalkeeper. It was just one of those bizarre games where Arsenal had so much attacking quality and talent and didn't use it. And I mean, obviously, there's two sort of schools of thought here. Number one
Yeah.
isn't this the sort of game that Rosa Kafaji has been exactly bought for to come on and break up a tight defence? And number two, and obviously this question I think will always hang over Jonas all season, every time Arsenal don't get a result, is would they have got a result if Viviana Miedema was
Yeah.
around? Because this was also the sort of thing, Miedema's scoring record, particularly against the teams that were perhaps the more defensive in the WSL, and perhaps came in to sit back in. She was so good at being able, I think, to shoot from range, and those very clever low shots into the bottom corner from range. So I think Arsenal maybe just lacked a bit of that spark. But
Yeah.
I do think Chelsea will find it. I don't think Chelsea will find it easy in any way, shape, or form.
I think it's so tough because it's really weird for us. Like we're usually quite good against sort of the Man City, the Chelsea, or United, right? The top sort of teams. It's just the low block teams that we just have a problem with it, and I think that's why I'm a bit annoyed because like we're not really showing signs of improvement. Like Everton are a great side; they've improved, and I'm not taking that away from them, but we should be beating them comfortably, maybe 2-0. And I think the problem that we have right now is that I don't see sort of a style of play. We look a bit in our attack looks a bit disjointed, and you look at the players we have: Russo, Mead, Cavaci, Caldenti. Like obviously individually, some of them are doing good, but I just feel like we should be clicking a lot more than what we are. But
Mm.
I think with Chelsea, defensively, like yesterday was quite poor, and I think that's a good sort of thing for Chelsea. I think for this game, I probably wouldn't play Zinsberger. Zinsberger's a great goalkeeper, but you mentioned Namdasar has had a really good start to the season, and I think if we want to win, I think I definitely would give her a shot. Obviously, it's a big game for her, so I sort of don't know if she would start or not.
Mhm.
But I know
Yeah.
Williamson's come back as well, and I think Williamson obviously is a few seasons back had a big ACL injury, and she's also just had concussion, and she picked up a lot of injuries along the way. So I think with Williamson, like I wouldn't mind if she didn't play because I think as well maybe she's just not ready yet. But as a squad, do you feel like with Arsenal, like obviously these new players have came in, Russo's been here. I think this is our second
Mhm.
season.
Mhm.
Like don't get me wrong, I'm happy to win a Conti Cup, but I always say if we win that with something else, or if we
Yeah.
won, it's not really good enough. But do you think the squad is underachieving, or do you feel like some of these players just aren't really performing how they should be under Jonas?
I think it's a really interesting and a really difficult
Yeah,
sort of question. I think it's sort of a two. Firstly, to address the underachieving element of it, I think that ultimately Arsenal did get some did have some games last year where, for instance, Sockgate at Stamford Bridge, where ultimately in that first half of that game, I think there were players that came off that pitch, whatever the instructions were, and would just look at themselves in the mirror and say, "I wasn't up for it today."
yeah,
I don't mind it as a fan. I certainly don't mind it as also a journalist. When a team plays their absolute best and loses to a better side, you hold your hands up and say, "Yeah, beaten by the better side on the day, is what it is." Similar to when Arsenal beat Chelsea 5 at the Emirates in the men's game last year. Just hold your hands
yeah,
up, beaten by the better side at the time. However, what I cannot excuse as a fan and also is a lack of effort. And I think there were
yeah,
times last year where certain Arsenal players you could look at maybe could be accused of that. Equally, I do personally think that maybe the size of the squad this year and the amount of depth in there has caused an additional, especially in the attacking areas, has caused an additional conundrum for Jonas Eidevall, because it means that I don't think necessarily knows what his first choice attack
Yeah,
looks like or his first choice 11 looks like. At the moment in time, from a Chelsea point of view, I think you can quite confidently say the first choice attack is looking like James in the 10, Canarud on the right, Guro Wrighton on the left. Sometimes you swap James and Wrighton around and have Wrighton in that 10
yeah,
area and then Myra Ramirez in front of it with Aggie Beaver Jones to come off the bench. That is quite confidently it. In Arsenal's case at the minute, I have no idea whether they will start Russo on Saturday or whether he will go for
yeah,
Blackstonian, whether it will be Mead on the right hand side, Ford on the right hand side, where I'm pretty confident Caldente will play, but some
yeah,
form in the attack. Will they choose to put Kafaji in the number 10 and try and, sit her in that space and maybe try and give Circa Nuskin and Erin Cuthbert something to think about if they choose to go forward? Because Nuskin the other day, one of the biggest things about against Real Madrid was her ability to get into the sort of final third and effectively act as de facto second striker was a really big thing for Chelsea when crossing it. But I do also think that you've got people like, for example, Caitlin Ford, who I think Ford is a fantastic player. Maybe didn't have as good a year as she could have
yeah,
last year, but it is a fantastic player. But at this moment in time, she seems to be doing auxiliary shifts at fullback, and I don't think that's helping her one bit. And I don't think that's the sort of player she is. I mean, I'm also a bit confused why people like Catherine Cool aren't getting a chance. I mean, I thought Cool
yeah,
had a very good loan last year at Everton, and I thought it was going to be a bit like, with Palova's injury, and I didn't expect Cooney Cross to play every single game. I thought maybe she'll get a chance. I mean, knowing my luck now, I'm now jinxing it for her to come in on Saturday and be player of the match. Everyone says, "Well, what was the fuss about?" But it does to me look like there's almost so many options in the squad, and
yeah,
Jonas' reluctance to rotate is meaning that you're getting players that are sort of just sitting there, and you're wondering, well, what is the point in them being there? Whereas Sonia has been
yeah,
very, very rotation heavy in the first couple of weeks, and even then has made a lot of sort of substitutes in game. I mean, Chelsea, I think they used all four, at least four the other day, possibly all five. They used all five against Crystal Palace. They used all five against Aston Villa. They are really rotating the squad around.
yeah. I think obviously rotation is absolutely fine, and like you said, with us, we're gonna have that a lot because we're in different competitions, and like for Arsenal, we have the luxury of having all of these players. But I agree. I mean, last season, like we had a squad depth; it wasn't as big as it is now, and even then, Jonas really didn't know his sort of starting 11 then. And I think
Hmm.
now it's sort of a bigger problem because, I mean, like I'm like you, going to the game at the weekend, I have no idea who's going to start. I mean, there's a few players that you probably think will start, like Holdenti, like you said. I know she's probably going to start, but Russo as well, she's sometimes off the bench, she sometimes starts. It's quite unpredictable, and I think that's sort of the problem we're having. But it's going to be a big game at the weekend. For Chelsea, would you make any changes to your team? Obviously, midweek, you had a big game. Do you think you need to make any rotations?
I think they'll probably bring Kadisha Buchanan back into the side because of Natalie Bjorn playing the last couple of games. Millie Bright will start. At left back, it will be fascinating to see what they do because, again, Sunday Baltimore played there against Real Madrid, but I think maybe you'll see Ashley Lawrence come back in. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me if they went for Ev Perisset at right back because of her record against Arsenal and also the fact that she's a bit more defensive and a bit more solid than Lucy Bronze. In the midfield, if Erin Cuthbert is fit and well, I expect her to partner Circa Nuskin, although Vika Captain did play very well in midweek, so it wouldn't surprise me again if there was question marks over Cuthbert's fitness due to her,
Yeah,
taking this knock in training, that they would choose to go with Captain. Um, Orion Jean Francois is still coming back from injury, so I don't think they'll throw him into this bear pit. And then for that front four, I mean, the only argument you can maybe make is possibly you might have James off the bench in a game like this because of their ability to change a game, and you maybe start with Canarud and Wrighton, and you put Macario in behind um, Myra Ramirez. Maybe you go with Beaver Jones for running off the end. I think
yeah,
there's so many options. This is the thing. Like I'm pretty confident in whatever 11 Chelsea can put out because of the nature of the squad this year. And I mean, the fact that they've got injuries at the moment to Kerr Official and Sophie Ingle, Aniek Nowen, they're still putting out a very, very strong side, whatever
yeah.
11 they do. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Sonia rotate. Equally, I wouldn't be totally shocked if she didn't do a thing because I get the feeling she's the sort of manager that, when things are going well, doesn't really necessarily want to change winning formulas.
Yeah, I think, like you said, if things are going well, you don't really, and players, if these players aren't injured and they're fit, there's no point in changing. Like, I think it's important to have that stability of, these players. But I think as well it's sort of good to switch up sometimes. Lauren James for me is an amazing player. She's the one that always does us dirty. Like, she's just so good. I think for Arsenal, like, genuinely, I don't mind 2 players. I just think to myself, if we get that win, that's what I'm bothered about. Like, I think for me,
Mhm.
obviously, yeah, it being the Emirates is an advantage, you could say, and obviously, the fans. I presume there's going to be a lot of fans there because I know there's a lot of Chelsea fans and there are a lot of Arsenal fans, and there's you. I
Mm.
mean, I think against Everton we got about 25,000 fans, which is I think is pretty good. So I think for this game it would be absolutely amazing. But for you, if Arsenal lose this, do you think anything will change with Jonas? Because I just don't know really. Like, I think for me, a lot of the fans have had enough for me at the moment. That's sort of what the vibe I'm getting at the moment.
Mm. I don't necessarily think anything will change like immediately after Saturday, but I do
Yeah.
think that if they then, that then the fixtures
Mm,
against Valerenga and West Ham become absolutely vital. And I do think even if they win both of those, then the international break comes. There are obviously options at this moment in time. Most obviously, Casey Stoney, who come in and is well liked. Carla Ward has an incredibly good CV, and knows Van Domselaar very very well. Is very well
yeah,
respected in the English game. You've got people like Mark Parsons that is is very much a
yeah,
safe pair of hands. Someone who could come in as an interim. There are internal coaches at Arsenal I know who are very very highly sort of regarded and rated. I think that's where it's more sort of dangerous. You're sort of probably looking at that because I mean, like you said earlier, it's interesting because I think if Arsenal win this, it's then 8 points from the opening four, 2 wins, 2 draws. You're still unbeaten. It
mm,
looks more remotely positive, I'd say, than maybe Chelsea's 2 wins and 1 loss. But if Chelsea do go ahead and win it, then suddenly they're on 9. They've got a game in hand. Depending on they'll at least go back to the top of the league, dependent on what happens with City on the Sunday and what happens with other teams on the Sunday. And then in Arsenal's case, they'll be on 5 points after 4 games, and
mm,
you'll be looking at them in that mid-table area with the likes of Liverpool and the likes of Tottenham.
yeah,
And I think that's where the concern will maybe come because it's fine to drop points, I think, to a Chelsea or a Manchester
yeah,
City. And like the points against Manchester City, the drop points against Manchester City were fine if you then went ahead and you beat Everton. But it's then dropping points in those games, I think, is what. And I do agree with you. I do think the WSL will be tighter this year. I think more teams will drop points against other sides. I don't think we're going to get, the situations where sort of, teams will only lose 1 game in a season or drop points 1 game in a season. I think we're past that nowadays because the league is more competitive. That
yeah,
said, I still do think, if Arsenal, by that point, let's say City win at the weekend themselves and they put themselves onto 10 points, they're 5 points behind the league leaders. Potentially, if Chelsea then win the game in hand against United, let's say, and win, so they're on to 12, suddenly you're 7 points behind. That means you're then saying there can't be any mistakes, and you still, got trips to Stamford Bridge, a trip to the Etihad, a trip to Leigh Sports Village, 2 North London derbies, Liverpool, which is never an easy game, and
yeah,
you're suddenly looking at that and saying, right, we can't make any mistakes. So I do think if they lose that one, it's possible. I will say that in Jonas's defence, I do think at this moment in time that there have been elements of games and parts of games, like yesterday, the first half, for example, I thought Arsenal played quite well.
yeah,
It's then what I think is more concerning is the way things dropped off, similar to against City. I thought after maybe a slight edgy first few minutes, they played quite well and they actually did quite well all the way through. The problem was then you look at a game like Leicester where they didn't really play well at
mm,
all.
yeah.
Everton didn't really play well at all, and it's sort of the consistency in performance seems to be a big issue.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, I wouldn't be happy obviously if we lost or if we drew, but if I see a good performance or something that I can really take, I think, do you know
Hmm.
what? Jonas has changed things. He's tried, and that's all I can be happy with. I mean, I think it's just the performance side of it as well. I know, obviously, I want to win, and we do need that win. But I think for me, it's like the performance. We want to see a good performance in the attacking sense as well. I mean,
Hmm.
defensively, I think we're okay. I think, well, obviously, with the goalkeeper, we were changing it quite a bit, and I think Sinsberger's probably got a year, and Domisar's probably going to be our number one. That's what I believe, but. I think with our attacking sort of players, like you said, I mean, we can have a good half, we can do well, but we're not. Our end product is so poor. We're not able to finish these chances or score, and that's what's so tough. But I think with Chelsea, it's weird. We always. Well, in recent years, we've been up for it, and I think that's why I feel like we could get something out of it. But for the game, what's your score prediction?
I don't know actually. I mean, Chelsea versus Arsenal could be absolutely any score. I think personally, I will say I think it might be a 1-1 or a 2-2, and I'd be quite happy
Yeah,
with a point before the game. I could see. I don't see both sides. I don't see either side really keeping a clean sheet. In all honesty, if they turn up, I think Chelsea might. I think it might be a case of that maybe Chelsea sort of score early on, then maybe Arsenal hit back, and then both teams have a bit of a lull, and then maybe go for it
yeah,
in the second half, and it kind of all peters out, to be honest. But I do think the danger on both sides, and I include Chelsea in this, I think is the case. If either side does get an early goal and then really kicks on from that and is really pressing them, I could see either one of the two sides really shipping, 2, 3, 4 against each other because I think that's how big momentum still is in the women's game.
yeah. I'm with you. I think it'll be like I think I see a draw happening. Really, I think 2-2 for me. Like there's definitely going to be goals in this. There always is against Arsenal and Chelsea. I do love the rivalry. I love the competition between us both. I think it's amazing. But I think what I think we'd both sort of take a draw. Really, I mean, I would certainly considering how good Chelsea have been and I know Arsenal are sort of struggling, but yeah, against Chelsea, Man City for Man City, we always do well against Man City for some reason. But yeah, I'm excited for this game. I just hope Arsenal can just put in a promising performance. But Rob, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. I do really appreciate it. It's been really nice to chat about both of our clubs. Before we go, do you want to just tell people where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me this year on X at journalism_RP, and you can also find my articles now for both DAZN UK when it comes to Women's Champions League at Her Football Hub and also at Sporting News.
Yeah, guys, please do check him out. And yeah, Rob, I thoroughly enjoyed this. And to those that are watching this back, I hope you have enjoyed this. Whether you're a Chelsea fan, Arsenal fan, whatever you are, thank you for watching this. Please do hit the like button on this. Do subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye, guys.